This video is the follow-up material for the Tech Forward Power Platform session. This is going to be video 4 of 5. In this video, we will be developing a Power App flow, and this flow, we are going to be using it for the manager's approval. So once an employee uploads their expense to the app, that is going to trigger an email to the manager to approve or deny that expense. If you attended Tech Forward, and similar to all of the other videos I've already created, there are training instructions that we're going to be following step by step. If you have a copy of this, great. If you do not, no need to worry. I'll take small screenshots of this document. I'll preview those little by little, and then we'll get into the demo of each one of those sections. This demo is going to have a total of 8 steps. Perfect. So let's get into step 1. So for step 1, we're going to navigate to the Power Automate home screen. And from there, that is where all the magic is going to start. So here we're at the Power Automate home screen, and we're going to click on Create here on the left to start creating our flow. And then we're going to click on Automated Cloud Flow, give this the name of Expense Approval Flow, and we'll click the trigger of when an item is created on a SharePoint list. First thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to collapse this Copilot because we will not be using it for this demo. And next we're going to correct the invalid parameters of our trigger. So we're going to click on our trigger, and here we're going to update the site address to the address of the SharePoint site where the list lives. And then we're going to pick the SharePoint list name, which is going to be expense submissions. And then lastly, for this section, we're going to expand the how often do you want to check for this item. And instead of 5 minutes, I'm going to reduce it down to 1 minute so that the demo doesn't take that long. Step 2, we are going to get the attachments from the new item. So next on the Power Automate flow, we're going to click on this plus sign here, and we'll add an action. Here we'll type in Get Attachments. And from there, we are going to select the Get Attachments for the SharePoint list related to our trigger. Here, we're going to select the site address. Next, we'll select the list name again. And then lastly, we're going to select the ID. We'll use dynamic content. And we're going to select the ID from when an item is created. Step 3, get the attachment content. So when we're working with Power Automate flows and attachments, you do need both of these steps, the get attachments and then the get attachment content. The get attachment content will get more the specifics of the attachments needed. So from our Power Automate flow, we're going to click on the plus sign right below the get attachments step, and then we will search here attachment content for SharePoint and attach. Next, we will assign the site address and the list name, same as the previous steps. And then next, we are going to add the ID, and that's going to be the same as the previous one, the dynamic content for when an item is created. And then the file identifier, we're going to use dynamic content, but this time we're going to use the ID of the get attachments. Step 4, start and wait for approval. The idea is that when an employee uploads their expense, that the flow is going to assemble an email to the manager with the information about the expense so that all information is easily and quickly reviewed all in one location for the manager. So that's what we're going to be doing next in step 4. So within Power Automate, we're going to click on the plus sign outside of the for each loop, and we'll add an action. Here, we're going to search, start and wait for approval, and then we're going to select that. And here we're going to select the approval type of first to respond. Now these are the fields that assemble that email I was talking about earlier. So the title is going to be our subject line. So I've pasted in what I think would be an appropriate subject line, and anything in the curly brackets I'm going to replace with dynamic content. So the expense for type of expense, by this employee will be in the subject line. The assigned to is going to be the person who will get the email address. So for testing purposes, I'm going to use my email address. But ideally in the future, you're going to be using the manager of the person who uploads the expense, and that you would use dynamic content for. Next is the detail. That's going to be more the body of the email. So I'm going to paste again what I think would be an appropriate body, pretty much listing out the details of each one. And again, those curly brackets I'll replace with dynamic content. So here we've got type of expense. I'll replace that. The amount, dynamic content again, and I'll select amount. Perfect. And then notes, if I highlight this and click on dynamic content, if I scroll down here, I'm at the end of my list. So I'll click see more to see the rest of the fields. And now I have notes. Next, I've got date of expense. Perfect. So now the body is ready. Next, I want to add the link to the item. So that means when the email is received, they can click on the link to see the attachment. So we'll click on dynamic content, and we're going to select the absolute URI from the get attachment step. And then for the link description, we're going to add expense attachments. Step 5, add a condition based on the approval response. So now that the manager can receive the email, they will have two options to approve or deny the expense. And then the flow is going to branch off into two different sections. And that's what we're adding next, is that branching off step. So within Power Automate, we are going to click on the plus sign immediately below the start and wait for approval and add an action. Here we're going to select control and then condition. You can also type the word condition, that works as well. And here we're going to put our condition. So we're going to use dynamic content, and we're going to select the responses approver response is what it is. Perfect. We'll select that. And we're saying if that response is equal to, and then we'll type in again the value of approve. And now we have our condition. Step 6 is to add an action to the true condition. So once a manager reviews the expense and clicks approve, what are the steps to follow? That's what is in the next demo here of the video. All right, so here under true, we're going to click on that plus sign to add an action. And we're going to search for the action of update an item. And we're going to make sure to select the SharePoint update an item. There it is. Here, we're going to update the address, the list name, and again, we're going to use the ID from when a new item is created here. Now we have to populate the employee name, date of expense, and amount because those are the required fields from our list. So we're going to use dynamic content, and those aren't going to be updated at all. So we're just going to use the trigger of when an item is created for all three of those. Next, we have the approval value below. Currently it's pending. That was the default value. We're going to change that to approved. And if you don't see the approval value, make sure you click Show All. That completes the Update an Item action. Next, we're going to send an email to the person to notify them that their expense has been approved. To do that, we're going to click on the plus sign here below Update Item, add an action, and we're going to search for Send an Email. And we're going to select the Outlook action. Perfect. Here, we're going to select the to address. So this is going to be dynamic content, and it's going to be send an email to the person who submitted the expense. So if we go to when an item is created and see more, we're going to select created by email. Perfect. Next, we're going to use the subject line. So the subject line, I'm going to paste what I think is an adequate subject line. And again, anything with curly brackets, we're going to update with dynamic content. So your expense for type of expense was approved. Next, we're going to add the body. There is the body. And here I've got 3 items to update with dynamic content. So the expense ID, and this time I'm using the update an item dynamic content instead of the when an item is created. Because none of those text fields are going to be changed, it doesn't matter which one I use in this scenario. Perfect. And that concludes the email. Step 7, add actions to the false condition. So this is going to be very similar to step 6. Step 6 was assigned for when a manager approved the expense. Now we're adding the steps when a manager declines the expense. So here we're going to click on the plus sign below false. We'll add an action. And here we're going to search update item, again from SharePoint. And here we're going to identify the site address, the list name, and then we're going to populate the required fields, which we have ID, employee name, date of expense, and amount. And all of those we're going to be using dynamic content, same as before. And there's the last one for amount. Perfect. Now the approval value, instead of pending, this is going to be denied. Perfect. Next, we're going to add another action, and we're going to send an email, and this is going to be that Office 365 Outlook action. And same as before, we're going to use dynamic content, and we're going to select the created by email address from the when an item is created, and make sure you click see more if needed. Perfect. Subject line, I've got the same thing as the other one, but this time it says denied. So your expense for type of expense was denied. Now we're going to insert a body to the message. And here we've got the expense ID with dynamic content for the type of expense. We'll switch that to dynamic content as well. In the amount of, again, dynamic content, was denied. Perfect. And that concludes the step 7. Step 8, test the flow. Now that we've got the flow all assembled together, let's see it work. So from the flow, we are first going to click on Save. That's here on the top right. That'll take a few seconds. And then, once available, we're going to click on Test. Okay, so Test is over here to the right. And now we're going to click on Manual and Test below. And if you recall, the flow is triggered when an item is created on that SharePoint list. So to do that, we need to navigate to our app. And here, I'm going to click on the Play button. And there, I'm going to start creating a new item. So I'll click on the plus sign. This is going to be for Jessica Garcia. I'm going to pick the expense date of March 29th. The expense type is going to be for travel. I'll do the amount of $200. I'll make sure to add notes. And then I'm going to add the attachment, so a copy of the receipt. Perfect. So now that I hit submit, I'm going to navigate to the Power Automate screen again so we can start seeing the flow in action. Okay, so give that a few seconds. There it is. So an item was created and it got the attachments. We've got a couple green check boxes there. So everything's looking good. If I scroll down here, the next step is that start and wait for approval, and you can see that it's currently spinning. So here in my email is the email that we assembled. If I click on that link, you can see the receipt that I uploaded. There it is. So we can close this, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to approve the expense. So now that I hit submit, I'll go back to Power Automate, and you're going to see the check boxes come through the true side. Perfect. The flow ran successfully. I got a green bar along the top. So let's go back to my email. And here is the approval email. So expense number 12 for travel in the amount of $200 has been approved. Lastly, if I go back to that SharePoint list, down here at the bottom, I have expense number 12. And there you can see the details, $200 and approved, just as it was submitted on the app. Perfect. So that concludes the 4th video. Next is going to be the 5th video, and that is going to be designing a Power BI visualizations for the expense submissions. So more to come. Thanks for watching.